Hello and welcome. So next up we're going to be looking at how to forecast a serviced accommodation property or a corporate short stay type accommodation. Now this sheet is a bit of a hybrid between a traditional rental model and also kind of a HMO model, because serviced accommodation and corporate stays aren't necessarily a particular type of property. It could work for apartments, which is more like a traditional rental, and also it could work for a HMO, room shares. Ultimately, it depends upon the model, depends upon your end tenant, depends upon how you're looking to market that particular property. Airbnb, Booking.com, going direct to relocation agents, going direct to companies to rent the property to them for a short space of time. All of these are options, and all of them will slightly change and vary how you should consider and forecast any given deal. Now, if this is your first forecasting sheet you've looked at, I'd recommend to go back to the buy to let forecasting sheet first. That just gives some context to how these sheets are structured, because they're all relatively similar in terms of kind of format and what we consider and what we look at. Okay, now as part of this sheet, we've got here a rental tab, a flip tab, and a stamp duty land tax tab at the bottom. Rentals is what we're going to be focusing on. Now, possible case scenario, this column is what we're going to be using first. And you can see here how the different costs are made up. So purchase price, purchasing costs, refurbishment, as we have done and as we have assessed other previous deal sheets. Purchasing costs at the top here, 400,000. Anything in a blacked out order is going to be an automated column. Anything without, you can change the calculations. Okay, so purchasing costs, 400,000 on this particular use case kind of property. This is an example really of a deal that we looked at in Chester that was great for converting to apartments and also would have been great for serviced accommodation. So if we provided a service, fully furnished, shorter term stays, rather than renting it out for buy-to-lets or even selling it to homeowners, these are the forecasted sheet and figures that we were considering and looking at. Stamp duty here, you can see how that comes into play. Okay, so what we've got here is purchase price, buying costs. No sourcing fees on this deal. Legals about 1,000. Going to auction, so the auction fees you can see here about 1,500. Survey cost for the property. Needed a significant survey doing on it because of the size of the building. No mortgage setups. You got here £27,000 worth of costs, and it's not an insignificant refurbishment. You can see here about 175,000 required for the refurbishment. 10% contingency, no management costs, no kind of additional project management fees on top of that. That was going to a company that would provide everything as a full service, so they would effectively project manage in-house as part of their profit margin. So you can see here, total investment costs. So this deal would have cost about £620,000 to get into for your purchase price or buying fees and refurbishment. Now on this project, we're anticipating about 6 units in total, so that would have been 6 apartments. A stay per night for Chester. There is a service accommodation market in Chester, so you can have a look at other apart hotels, you can have a look at properties on Airbnb, properties on Booking.com, and get an idea for what the general cost per night might be. You can see here, that gives us a gross monthly rental income. Now this certainly looks significant and healthy, but this does get reduced down, as we'll see shortly. Now, to give some context, this gross monthly rental income is made up of cell C28, cell here, price per night, times by 365 nights of the year, divided by 12, gives us our monthly income, times by the amount of units, C26. So that's our total potential income per month for the whole development. So that's a gross figure at 100% occupancy of about 30%. Now, service accommodation will be lower occupancy than most HMOs and lower occupancy certainly than buy-to-let generally, but it should be more along the lines of maybe hotel occupancy rates. Poor performing hotel would be 50-60% occupancy. An average performing hotel would probably be about 80-85% occupancy, hopefully higher. A good performing hotel should be about 90% plus occupancy generally. As a rough rule of thumb, obviously locations will vary this, quality hotel will vary this, any significant events will vary this. but this gives you a bit of an idea. So 90% occupancy rate. So at a gross monthly rental income, at a 90% occupancy rate, that gives us our predicted rental income after occupancy has been taken into account, and our predicted rental yield after occupancy is taken into account. Management fees. So this is assuming that we're using a managing agent. Most managing agents, what we've typically found for service accommodation is about 25% cost to manage these projects. Obviously that's higher than buy-to-let and higher than HMOs because there's more work involved, it's more active as a service, and it's more specialised as a service. So you need particular agents that are going to be able to manage these projects for you. So it's a healthy chunk, but there's a reason for that. Management fees here is pre-calculated, and total income minus your management fees here. And that gives you a gross yield. So you can see here, started off about 30% gross. That's now been brought down to about 18.9% gross on this project, when we've taken into account occupancy and management. Then we've got to do the running costs. So what does it actually cost to physically run this particular building? Well, brand new property, or sorry, not brand new property, but brand new refurb, significant refurb, we should be putting in materials and infrastructure that's going to be quite a low general running costs. So you can see here what we've anticipated really for the buildings. Now this is per unit. So let's just add this additional information here for you. Electricity, no gas, water. So these are individual apartments, remember, that we would have separated out in this particular building. Broadband, council tax, insurance. No gas needed, so take out gas safety. Cleaner and laundry. We're going to need to run this like a hotel, typically, providing a service. So that is an extra cost that you wouldn't have, certainly in buy-to-lets, and laundry you wouldn't have in HMOs either. Maintenance cost. Brand new refurbishment going into this project, but you've still got to have some budget there for ongoing maintenance of the building and also furniture and fittings. You've got a calculation here that gives you a cost as a percentage of income. And then this gives you a running cost per unit per month. And then this gives you a total cost for all of the units, so across the whole building. Now you can start to see then how that starts to play in as a net yield. So our net income across the whole building is about £7,500 per month, and a net rental yield here about 14.5. So what we had originally, about 30% as a gross rental income, assuming buying the building for 175 grand refurb, in it totally for 620, and we've got 6 apartments out of that. Our gross rental income possibly around 30,000. Sorry, about 30%. That nets down to half that, just over 14%. Still a very good return, still a very good project, still a very good kind of deal. We're left with, if we did this deal, we didn't go ahead with it, unfortunately, in the end. We didn't manage to acquire this property, but we've gone ahead with it and all the figures had worked out. We would have given us 6 apartments that would have been great to sell at any time in the future to homeowners, and also would have given us a very strong net rental income on that as well. Now these figures can really start to change the dynamic. As with the HMO forecasting, as you start to change some of the calculations, you can see really this net yield be impacted quite radically. So if we were to change the rental income, let's say, and we achieve £90 per night instead of £85 per night, we have a small bump here in the true net yield. Not insignificant, it's a very good increase, about 1% plus. However, we should change the dynamics of the purchase, so maybe we're able to buy this property for 350 instead of 400. And maybe the refurbishment was about 160 instead of 175. You can see here again the net yield has gone up by another 2% plus. So rental income will have an impact, and it is certainly usually more achievable to get a very small bump, so an extra £5 per room per night, by doing better marketing, maybe slightly nicer finishings, maybe professional photos. All of these things can play into it to give you a slightly better rate of return, maybe just improved management, getting a slightly higher occupancy. That will give you a slight increase on your net yield of about 1% or so based on that example we showed you. But ultimately trying to impact the figures that you can buy the property for, so buying it right on day one and managing the refurbishment cost is really going to add to the bottom line. So they're two key kind of calculations that you can see here that are really important to take into account, really important to focus on. Because if you get those wrong, that can really impact your net yield at the bottom. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, don't hesitate to ask as always. Again, if you wanted to see more context on the flip sheets, more context on the stamp duty land tax sheet, if you go to the buy-to-let project forecast, you'll be able to have a look at that and see how that plays in. But all of these figures come across from your rental sheet, and then you have here property sale. You can tweak that to give you an idea of what your ROI would be on any given project if you indeed needed to sell it rather than retain it for your serviced accommodation or corporate stays. That's the end of the forecasting sheet for that one. Any questions, as always, again, don't hesitate to ask, and look forward to catching up with you on the next video. All the best. Take care.